Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to today's iOrientation session on working in the US. So first of all, hello, welcome everyone. Um, I recognize some of your names from this morning's coffee hour, so thanks for joining in this evening. I know some of you are degree-seeking students and some may be exchange students. Regardless of what you are doing here at UCSD, the International Services and Engagement Office would love to welcome you to UC San Diego. My name is Kyle Arganza, and I am a international student advisor here at ISEO. I love coming to some of our events that we hold, so feel free to come chat with me about what to do in San Diego. Specifically, I really love nature. So if you're interested in hiking spots, cool beaches to check out, I'd be happy to point you in the right direction. Now, time for some housekeeping items. First of all, you are all on a listen only mode, meaning you can hear us, but we can't hear you. However, we still want to hear your questions, so please use the Q&A feature to submit any questions you have throughout the presentation. And we will use that to answer all of your questions either during the presentation or at the end. This presentation is also being recorded and will be uploaded on our website to inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu, and I'll put a link in the chat as well for you. And please stick through to the end because we will have a survey for today's session where you'll be entered into a gift card giveaway. And finally, now that you all have been able to successfully enter the US, I do want to remind you that you need to submit a check-in form in order to activate your I-20 or DS 2019 document. And your deadline to submit this form is within 10 days after you have arrived into the US. So if you have not done so yet, please do submit the check-in form by visiting icheckin.ucsd.edu for instructions. All right, now let's begin. So welcome to our Working in the US session. I'd like to hand it over to my colleague Jessica Boyle to help help explain to us how exactly can we work in the US.
Thank you, Kyle. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. As Kyle mentioned, my name is Jessica Boyle. I am also an international student advisor here at the International Services and Engagement Office, also known as ISEO. I have been working in higher education and international education for over a decade now, and I am a San Diego native. San Diego is my hometown. So like Kyle, I really love this city. I also love getting outside. I would love to share recommendations with you if I see you at a future event about all the fun and exciting things you can do in this city. And I'm excited for you to have time in my hometown while you're here studying for your degree or your non-degree program at UC San Diego. We have a high density presentation today on working in the US. So let's get started. Today, we're going to be talking about employment. Specifically, what is employment authorization? What does that mean? We're going to talk about the different types of employment, both during your program and also after you complete your program that you may be eligible for. We'll discuss general timeline and eligibility for those different types of employment authorization. Um, Briefly go over how to apply and share some additional resources for you to reference as you begin to think about working and getting some more experience in your field of study. All right, so let's jump in. We're going to start with what is employment authorization. So international and exchange students on either an F1 visa or a J1 visa have the benefit of working in the US during and or after your program of study. However, it really depends on when you're working. Are you working during your program or after your program? And where you work. Are you working on campus or off campus? And this combination of when and where you work will determine the proper permission that you need to show on a specific document. before you can begin working. This document that reflects your permission to work is known as your employment authorization. Here are examples of the different types of employment authorization you might receive, depending again on when and where you are engaging in employment. For some types of employment, we might add a notation on your Form I-20 or DS 2019. Or some types of employment might also require that you receive an employment authorization card, or what we refer to as an EAD. This is issued by the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. And then other types of employment might not require a notation on your I-20 or DS 2019 or a card from the US government. They might instead simply require a support letter from our office. Knowing which type of employment authorization you need before you start working is really important. And in this presentation, we're going to cover which of these different types of employment authorization is needed for the kinds of employment that you can engage in. One common question we get that I want to address right away, students often ask us, is my social security card or my social security number, is that a form of employment authorization? And the answer is no. So a social security card is not a form of employment authorization. A social security number is for tax purposes. If you receive paid employment in the United States, your employer will report taxes. However, you can only use your social security number when it is paired with one of the forms of employment authorization that we reviewed in the last slide. So again, no, for now, your social security card is not a form of employment authorization. At the end of this presentation, we're going to talk briefly about how to apply for a social security number. But I just want to make it crystal clear to start that a social security number is not a form of employment authorization. All right, so let's talk about what kinds of employment you may be eligible to engage in during or after your program here at UC San Diego. We're going to talk about the types of F1 student employment first, and then we will move on to our J1 students. So if you are here on an F1 student visa, during your program, meaning while you are enrolled in courses and still within the program start and end dates as shown on your Form I-20, during your program as an F1 student, you are eligible to work on campus. On campus is largely defined as employment that takes place on UC San Diego's campus, where you are providing a direct service to our campus community. So examples of this might be graduate student research positions, teaching assistantships, or you could be working at the UC San Diego bookstore, the Price Center, maybe the Target or Starbucks on campus. These are all different types of on-campus employment. Something to note about on-campus employment is that it does not need to be related to your program of study. So if you are an engineering major, for example, you can totally work as a barista at our on-campus Starbucks. On-campus employment does not need to be related to what you are studying. The second type of employment that you might engage in during your program is known as curricular practical training, or CPT. CPT is for off-campus paid employment that is related to your field of study. So if you, as an F1 student, are an engineering major and you find an off-campus paid internship in engineering, you would need to apply for CPT employment authorization before you can start that job. In a little bit, we'll go more into eligibility and how you apply, but for now, just know that off-campus paid employment opportunities require CPT. For non-paid opportunities, as an F1 student, like volunteering and unpaid internships, these are considered, I'm sorry, like volunteering and unpaid internships. This would be things like volunteering at a nonprofit or participating in a community service event. There is no something where there's no expectation of pay, right? F1 students are eligible to engage in these types of events during your program. Now, what about after you graduate? After your program, once you have completed all of your coursework, um, and you're thinking about what am I going to do next, F1 students are eligible to stay in the US and work for an additional 12 months. This period of time is known as post-completion optional practical training, or OPT. Any kind of work that you do after you have completed your program must be authorized through post-completion OPT. We're not going to go into too much detail about the OPT application process during this presentation. However, what's important to know for now is that if you are an F1 student and you want to work after graduation, you must first receive OPT employment authorization before you can start working. All right, so these are the types of employment that are available for F1 students. All right, so now let's take a look at the types of employment authorization available for our J1 students. J1 students, during your program, meaning again, while you are enrolled in courses and still within the program start and end dates as shown on your Form DS 2019, during your program, you are also eligible to work on campus. Again, this is employment that is on UC San Diego's campus and provides a direct service to our campus community. So graduate student researchers, teaching assistants, working at the Price Center or the bookstore or any vendor like Starbucks or Target that's physically located on our campus. That would be on-campus employment. If you would like to work off campus during your program, the form of employment that you must apply for is called pre-completion academic training. Academic training is often referred to as AT for short, so you might hear me use that a lot. Pre-completion AT is required for any off-campus employment, including both paid and unpaid opportunities, and the job must be directly related to your major or field of study. We have a very helpful guide on how to apply for academic training on our website, and we're also going to touch on it briefly later today. But again, for now, just know that any off-campus employment that you want to undertake during your program of study must be in your field of study and will need to be authorized via pre-completion academic training. J1 students may also engage in volunteer work. And again, I want to clarify that volunteering would be defined as donating your time to an organization whose primary purpose is humanitarian in nature, right? Meaning you are providing your services and not receiving any type of compensation, and it's totally unrelated to what you are studying. It is strictly charitable. So this might be like volunteering at a local soup kitchen or a homeless shelter. If, as a J1 student, you choose to undertake a volunteer position, you need to be sure that the nature of the work is, again, strictly humanitarian. If it's related to your field of study in any way, that would not be considered volunteering. In that case, you would need to apply for academic training instead. All right, and then J1 students, as you are finishing your program, thinking about what am I going to do next? After your program, if you want to work, whether on or off campus, whether paid or unpaid, you must apply for what's called post-completion academic training. Again, in this case, academic training still must be directly related to your field of study. All right, so these are the types of employment that are available to J1 students. Okay, so now that we know what kinds of employment authorization you might be eligible to apply for and the types of employment that they go along with, let's talk about when could you start? When would you be eligible for these employment benefits? Let's take a look and go back again to our F1 students. So for our F1 students for on-campus employment, if you are going to be working in an on-campus position, you can begin on-campus employment up to 30 days before your program start date, as it's shown on your Form I-20. For curricular practical training, CPT, so for paid off-campus employment related to your field of study, you must complete what is known as the 1 academic year requirement before you can be eligible for CPT. What this means is that you have maintained your current Form I-20 with the same SEVIS ID number for a minimum of 3/4 of full-time enrollment, which is equivalent to 1 academic year. Some of you might be starting your program here at UC San Diego, having already met the one-year academic requirement. Maybe you maintained your CVIS ID number at a previous institution, like a community college, and you've transferred your CVIS record here. Or maybe you've just completed a previous degree here at UC San Diego and you requested a change of level I-20. Um, some of you may have recently changed status, so maybe you have maintained your previous enrollment here in H4 or E2 status or a different non-immigrant status. If that's the case, any of that time that you spent enrolled full-time in that other status can be counted toward meeting the one academic year requirement. If you're not sure whether you've met the one academic year requirement, you can always come check with us. But those of you who are newly arrived to the United States for the first time, beginning a brand new program this quarter, you will need to meet the one academic year requirement. So you need to complete 3/4 of full-time enrollment on the same CVIS ID number before you become eligible to engage in CPT, off-campus paid employment. F1 students for volunteering and unpaid internships, similarly to on-campus employment, you can begin up to 30 days before your program start date. And then for employment after your program ends, for F1 post-completion OPT, you must have met the one academic year requirement, and you need to have completed all of your degree requirements. And you must have applied for OPT within a very specific window from your graduation date and received approval from the US government before you can start working. We're going to talk about this in a little more detail later. And in addition, though, our office will offer several additional workshops and sessions like this that are available for you to learn more about the OPT application process later on throughout the year. Before we move on to our J1 students, I want to put forward a very important reminder. Just again, do not start working until you have the proper employment authorization. So even if you are looking at this chart and you think, oh, I've met the time frame to be eligible for a certain type of employment, remember that you are not eligible to work until you have received the proper employment authorization. Okay, for our J1 students, let's take a look at the same question with regards to the different types of employment. When are you eligible to begin working? For on-campus employment during your program, J1 students can begin working on campus as early as the program start date shown on your Form DS 2019. Again, if you have received the proper employment authorization from ISEO before you start work. For off-campus employment during your program, so pre-completion academic training, you must have completed one term or 1/4 of full-time enrollment before you are eligible to undertake that off-campus employment. And remember that this off-campus employment has to be directly related to your field of study. For volunteering, you can begin up to 30 days before your program begins. And then J1 students, in order to work after your program ends, so this would be post-completion academic training, you must also meet the one term or 1/4 requirement, meaning you've completed 1/4 of full-time enrollment, and though you have to also have completed all of your program requirements. The additional trick here with post-completion academic training is that you have to apply for it before your program ends. We will be offering, again, workshops throughout the year that will take a deep dive into how you apply for academic training. So do watch our events calendar, which we will highlight at the end of this presentation for those offerings if you want to learn more about the academic training application process. And again, same for our J1 students, a reminder, do not begin working until you have met until you have the proper employment authorization. Even if you have met the timeframes that you see on this chart, remember that until you actually have the physical document that reflects your permission to work, you cannot start working. All right. We're about midway through. I know this is a content-dense presentation. As a reminder, if you are having questions come up as you're listening, please feel free to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we will be happy to address those questions for you. So, all right. So now that we have talked about what employment authorization is, different types of employment you might be eligible for, and when you become eligible, let's talk about how to apply for these different types of employment authorization. So hopefully, all of you are familiar with ISEO's iPortal. iPortal is our online service request system. This is where you can submit your requests to initiate the employment authorization processes. So for J1 on-campus employment, J1 pre and post academic training, F1 CPT, F1 OPT, Social Security application support letters, all of these requests are initiated by logging in to iPortal at iportal.ucsd.edu and submitting the correct request form in order to ask for the particular type of employment authorization you are in need of. So we are going to take a closer look at the eligibility and application components of each of these types of employment authorization we've talked about. Again, let's start with F1 students and on-campus employment. So for F1 on-campus employment, again, you can begin up to 30 days prior to your program start date. The job can be paid or unpaid. There is no specific enrollment or course requirements. Your job does not need to be related to your major or program of study. However, one important thing to note about on-campus employment is that while classes are in session during the academic year, which is the fall, winter, and spring quarters, your on-campus employment cannot exceed 20 hours per week. During the breaks between the terms or during the summer vacation term, you may be eligible to work more than 20 hours per week, but during the school year, while classes are in session, your on-campus employment cannot exceed 20 hours per week. There is no application in order to work on campus for F1 students. Your Form I-20 is all you need in order to show that you are authorized to work on campus at UC San Diego. Do note that you need to make sure that your Form I-20 is valid. So that means that you've completed the check-in process so that we are able to activate your Form I-20 and that you are still within the dates of your program. Your Form I-20 must remain valid in order for you to retain your on-campus employment authorization. You will need to show your active valid Form I-20 to your on-campus hiring department. For more information on F1 on-campus employment, visit our website at iwork.ucsd.edu. All right, so now for F1, for an F1 student to work off campus through curricular practical training or CPT. So this is off-campus paid employment during your program of study. You must have met the one academic year requirement. The job you are taking must be a paid job, and it needs to be directly related to your major or field of study. In order to apply for CPT, you need to already have the official job offer in hand. You must also be enrolled in a specific course for the term you want to undertake the employment. So CPT requires that there be a curricular component in order for you to engage in employment off campus. This basically means that you need to earn credit or units for the off campus employment experience. Um, you might need to ask your college if you're an undergraduate student or your academic department if you're a graduate student, which course do I need to be enrolled in for CPT? Most majors and departments will have a specific course you must enroll in order to apply coursework and earn credit toward your off-campus employment experience. And then last but not least, during the academic year, when classes are in session, you cannot work more than 20 hours per week on CPT. In order to apply for a CPT, the application, you need to have already received a job offer and you must already be enrolled in the CPT course for the relevant term. Um, if you are a graduate student looking to do CPT in the summer, for the summer term, we also have a summer cooperative agreement that you can engage in with your employer in lieu of summer registration. All of this CPT information is thoroughly explained on our website, so you can visit cpt.ucsd.edu to see the full outline of the application requirements and how to submit those in iPortal. Um, so once you do have all those documents and information prepared, as I just mentioned, you'll submit an iPortal request for F1 curricular practical training. Once we've reviewed your request and determined you're eligible, we will issue you a Form I-20 that has a CPT notation on the second page. That notation is going to state your employment information. You'll be able to then show that CPT I-20 to your employer, and that is your form of work authorization. All right. And so for F1 OPT, so to work after you have completed your program of study as an F1 student. Again, basic eligibility, you must have met the one academic year requirement. You need to have completed all of your degree requirements. OPT employment can be paid or unpaid on campus or off campus. However, whatever job you do, it does need to be directly related to your major or field of study that you earned your degree in or you finished your program in. And then again, there's a very specific window within which you need to apply if you do want to do OPT. In terms of the application process, in order to apply for OPT, unlike CPT, for OPT, you do not need to have a job offer ahead of time. You will typically actually have a period of time where you can look for jobs while your OPT application is in process. To begin the OPT application process, you'll submit an iPortal request for F1 optional practical training. Once we've reviewed your request and determined you are recommendable for OPT, we will then issue you a Form I-20 that has an OPT notation on the second page. You will then need to take that OPT I-20 and use it to submit a complete OPT application to the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, also known as USCIS. USCIS is the final approver for F1 OPT employment authorization. So once they have reviewed your application and determined that you are eligible, they will issue you an employment authorization document, also called an EAD card. You will show that EAD card to your OPT employer, and that is the form of work authorization or employment authorization you'll need in order to begin working. All right, so some general tips for F1 employment. Um, as an F1 student, please do your research ahead of time. Always research your employment authorization requirements at least 1 quarter or 3 months in advance of when you hope to start working. Um, Many students get a job and then start to research what type of employment authorization do I need for this job? And this can actually cause a lot of stress both on the student and on their potential employer because the process to obtain employment authorization can take some time. So we recommend do your research far ahead of time. Start researching what you need for employment authorization at least 3 months before you plan to work, even if you haven't started the job search yet. The employment authorization document does need to be in your hand, meaning you need to have received the employment authorization before you can actually start working, right? So again, plan ahead. And then finally, again, same reminder, do not begin working without the proper authorization. Unauthorized employment In other words, working in the United States without proper employment authorization does have a pretty significant negative impact on your immigration status and on your ability to return to the US in the future and to obtain future immigration benefits. So it's really important to make sure you obtain the proper employment authorization and that you also do not begin working until you have received that employment authorization. Okay. All right, so let's now move on to our J1 students with the same breakdown of the different types of employment authorization and eligibility and application. So J1 students, if you are interested in pursuing on-campus employment, you are eligible to begin work in an on-campus job as of your program start date, as shown on your Form DS 2019. The job can be paid or unpaid, and it does not need to be related to your field of study. There's no specific course requirement. However, again, one important thing to note is that while classes are in session during the academic year, your on-campus employment cannot exceed 20 hours per week. During the breaks between terms or during the summer vacation term, you may be eligible to work more than 20 hours per week, but during the school year, while classes are in session, your on-campus employment cannot exceed 20 hours per week. To apply for J1 on-campus employment authorization, you do need to have a job offer already in hand from the hiring department on campus. Once you have this, you need to obtain the employment authorization from our office. So you will need to submit that job offer in iPortal via the J1 permission support letter request. Our office will then issue you a permission support letter, and you can show this letter as your employment authorization to your hiring department on campus and then begin working. More information on J1 on-campus employment can be found online at iwork.ucsd.edu. If, as a J1 student, you would like to work off campus during your program in a job that is directly related to your major or field of study, that's pre-completion academic training. To be eligible, you must have met the 1 quarter requirement. Your job can be paid or unpaid. You must have a job offer already in hand, and the job must be related, again, to your field of study. You must also be enrolled in a specific internship course for the term you want to undertake the employment. Um, Pre-completion academic training requires that there be, again, a curricular component in order for you to engage in that off-campus employment. So in other words, you need to earn credit or units for that off-campus employment experience. You'll need to ask your college if you're an undergraduate student, or your academic department if you're a graduate student, which course do you need to be enrolled in for pre-completion academic training. And then last eligibility requirement during the academic year when classes are in session, you cannot work more than 20 hours per week on pre-completion academic training. On breaks or during the summer vacation term, you may be eligible for more. In order to apply for pre-completion AT, you need to have already received a job offer, and you must already be enrolled in the relevant course for the term you plan to undertake employment. Um, Once you have these two pieces, you'll then need to submit an iPortal request for J1 academic training. Once we've reviewed it and you are eligible, we will add a notation on your Form DS 2019. You can then show your updated DS 2019 as your form of employment authorization to your off-campus employer. To learn more about academic training, you can visit our website at at.ucsd.edu. All right. And then if as a J1 student, you are interested in working after your program ends, you'll need to apply for post-completion academic training. And remember, this is for any work on or off campus, paid or unpaid, that you wish to undertake after your program has ended. To be eligible for post-completion academic training, you must have met the one-term requirement. Again, your job can be paid or unpaid. You do need to have a job offer already in hand. The job must be directly related to your major or field of study, and the job must be at least 20 hours per week. So after you have graduated or finished your program and you are planning to work, you need to be looking for a job that is at the very least 20 hours per week or more, right? Um, Most importantly, to be eligible, you must have completed all of your program of study requirements, and you need to apply and be approved for the post-completion academic training before your program ends. So, in other words, you need to make sure that before the end of your final quarter of enrollment, you have applied for your post-completion academic training. As far as the application is concerned, so again, you need to already have received a job offer. You need to be able to show that you've completed all of your program of study requirements. Once you have these two pieces, you will submit an iPortal request for J1 academic training. Once we reviewed it and you're eligible, we will add a notation on your Form DS 2019 for post-completion academic training. We will also edit the program end date on your DS 2019 at that point so that it shows you are still on your J1 program, now working through post-completion academic training. You'll then be able to show your updated DS 2019 as your form of employment authorization to your employer. Again, more information on academic training, both pre and post completion academic training, is on our website at at.ucsd.edu. For our J1 students, one last note on academic training. The length or amount or duration of academic training that you are eligible for is determined by your program level and by the length of your program of study. Um, if you are a J1 bachelor's or master's degree seeking student, meaning you're at a bachelor's or master's level and you're earning your degree from UC San Diego, you are eligible for up to 18 months of academic training or the amount of time equivalent to the duration of your program of study, whichever is shorter. So, for example, if you are a master's student in a one-year program, because your program duration is less than 18 months, you will be eligible for a total amount of academic training equivalent to the length of your program. Okay. The academic training period is inclusive, or I should say the total academic training period is inclusive of any pre and post completion academic training together. So your total pre and post completion academic training together cannot exceed 18 months or the length of your program, again, whichever is shorter. So for example, for another example, let's say you are a master's student in a 2-year program. If you do no pre-completion academic training during your program, then you would be eligible for 18 months of post-completion academic training after you graduate. However, if you do, let's say, 6 months of pre-completion academic training during your program, then you would only be eligible for 12 months of post-completion academic training after you graduate, right? So again, for our bachelor's and master's students, for academic training, you're eligible for up to 18 months or the equivalent amount of time to your program duration, whichever is shorter. And your total amount of academic training is inclusive of both pre and post completion AT. For our doctoral degree seeking students, those of you pursuing your PhD here at UC San Diego, you're eligible for up to 36 months of academic training. That 36 months of academic training is again inclusive of both pre-completion and post-completion academic training. And your pre-completion AT is limited to 18 months. So in other words, of the total 36 months of academic training, You cannot do more than 18 of those months via pre-completion AT. And then last but not least, I know that many of our J1 non-degree students, those of you who are our UC, EAP, reciprocity, or global exchange students, some of you might be here today. Since your J1 programs are for much shorter amounts of time, you may be here for just 1, 2, or 3 quarters. The total time of academic training that you are eligible for is equal to the duration of your J1 program at UC San Diego. So if you're here for just 1 quarter, you're eligible for 3 months of academic training. If you're here for 2 quarters, it's 6 months. If you're here for 3 quarters, it's 9 months. And the total academic training time is, again, inclusive of both pre and post completion academic training. So for example, if you are an exchange student here for 3 quarters and you have 9 months of academic training eligibility, if you worked 3 months of that AT as pre-completion academic training before your program ends, then you would have 6 months of post-completion academic training left for after your program ends, right? Um, and for our exchange students, something to keep in mind, remember that to undertake post completion academic training, meaning you would stay longer in the United States than you perhaps originally planned. If that's something that you consider, you'll need to discuss it with your academic advisor at your home institution to understand the impact of a longer absence or extending your exchange program, right? To understand the impact of that on your degree plan back home at your home institution. All right, so some final general employment tips for our J1 students. Again, please plan ahead, do your research in advance to think about what's the type of employment opportunity that you might be interested in, what is the employment authorization you need to undertake that. If you have questions, make sure to discuss your employment plans with one of us, an ISEO advisor. Do your research at least 1 quarter, 3 months in advance of when you hope to work, especially if you're hoping to work off campus or after your program ends. Do that research in advance, even if you have not started the job search yet. Um, and remember that if you're planning to apply for post-completion academic training, you must apply before your program end date, as it's shown on your DS 2019. Once your program end date passes, once you've finished your program, you are no longer eligible for academic training. So again, make sure you apply in advance. Okay, so we've covered a lot. We're wrapping up to the end. Very quickly, I want to share a little bit more about Social Security numbers, since these are common questions we get. So as I mentioned earlier, a Social Security number is a 9-digit ID number assigned to you by the US government for tax identification purposes. An SSN is required for all F1 and J1 students who will be earning money in the United States. So we get a common question from new students often along the lines of, I'm renting an apartment or I'm trying to apply for a driver's license and they're asking me for a social security number. Can I get one? The answer is no, not unless you are going to be authorized for employment. So in order to apply for a social security number, you first have to receive employment authorization for a job. Um, you need to have the proper employment authorization and be engaging in a job that's going to earn you money in the US. If the position is not paid and therefore there are no tax implications, then you will not be eligible for a social security number. Um, in order to apply for an SSN, you need to have that proper employment authorization. Using that, you can then visit the Social Security Administration office to apply. Our office will provide you with a Social Security number support letter as part of that process, which you can request from us in the iPortal. And as I mentioned again, just remember, do not confuse the Social Security card or your Social Security number with employment authorization. They are not the same thing, but you do need both in order to work in a paid position in the United States. We have a lot of information on our website about getting a social security number. If you visit our website, which is iseo.ucsd.edu, and you search SSN in the search bar, you will find the information you're looking for. All right. I know this is a very long presentation. We want to just end with some career resources. So you do have an amazing support system here at UC San Diego. You have our office, ISEO, you have your academic advisors in your college or academic department, you have your professors and your faculty. If you're a graduate student, you have your PI. You also have access to career advisors. Our office, ISEO, is here to answer your questions about gaining the proper employment authorization for your visa status and type of employment you want to undertake. Your college advisors and graduate coordinators, your academic departments can advise you regarding course requirements for your work experience. Um, these advisors, along with your professors and your faculty, can help you identify what courses or research or projects or other opportunities on campus can help prepare you for your desired career outcomes. Your professors and faculty in particular can be wonderful resources for future career connections. And our Career Center can help you navigate the job search and job application processes here in the United States. So I want to take a moment to highlight them in particular. Um, so the Career Center is a great place to help you plan for your professional future. Their website is career.ucsd.edu, and we heartily encourage you to take a look at their website and learn more about the services they offer and how to utilize them as a resource. They can help you write and review your resume, cover letters. They can conduct practice virtual interviews with you so that you're ready when the time comes for your real interview. They can also help you discover and search for different types of internships, research, on and off campus employment opportunities in your field of study. How do you find those? Those are things they can help you with. They also host multiple resource fairs and networking events throughout the year. And these are great places to meet and talk to potential employers. And the Career Center can also help you navigate online job search tools like Handshake, Going Global, LinkedIn, Indeed, all of those places and more. Um, and for those of you who are looking to get into graduate programs or medical school, our Career Center can also walk you through preparing to be a better candidate for those higher degree options. So the Career Center is a really incredible resource. They have wonderful coaches and advisors who will take the time with you and help you as you prepare to take your next career steps. All right, so to end, some final resources and tips for all of you F1 and J1 students alike. Please, please, please plan ahead, do your research. If you have questions about your employment authorization, come talk to us here at ISEO. Visit iwork.ucsd.edu for more information on all the different types of employment and employment authorization we've covered today. As we just reviewed, start building your support system now. Take the time to develop connections with your advisors and your faculty. Make good first impressions. Start thinking now about the kind of long-term opportunities you might be interested in pursuing. And then in the Career Center, we have two advisors who are experts in supporting international students in their career journeys, Jessica Wilson and Josue Pinal. You are more than welcome to reach out to them directly with questions you may have. Their contact information is here on the screen. And as a reminder, we will have this presentation and the slides posted on our website at inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu for you to refer back to. Okay, and with that, I am going to hand it back to our host to wrap us up.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I've been an international student advisor for 5 years, and I'm still learning new things from you. So thank you for leading this presentation. So in just a moment, we're going to move into some Q&A time. So if you have any burning questions, now is a great time to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen and submit those questions to us. Before we start answering some Q&A questions, I want to spend some time showing you different ways you can get engaged here at UC San Diego. So I know we saw some of you this morning at our global coffee hours. These actually happen every single month. So on the second Wednesday of every month from 8 to 9:30 a.m. in the ISEO Eucalyptus Grove, we have these global coffee hours. So please come on by and meet some of your fellow peers and us. And we also have a bunch of other events, which you can find at our iEvents calendar. I've also sent a link in the chat. And for quick reference, you can go to ievents.ucsd.edu to see all of the different events we are hosting, and also events that are hosted by student orgs and campus departments. So this is a live calendar that's constantly being updated, and it features events that are globally engaged and have that globally engaged mindset. And finally, thanks for sticking through to the end. I know this was a long, jam-packed presentation. So please take a few moments to fill out this survey by scanning this QR code. And by filling it out, you will be entered into a raffle for a gift card, for a $10 Amazon gift card. And also, we really do appreciate your feedback. Every year we want to constantly improve our presentations. So please let us know if there's any feedback that you have. Final reminders again, if you have not yet done so, please submit your check-in form to iPortal. This is important because this is how we are going to activate your immigration document, so your I-20 or DS 2019. Feel free to register for other events and sessions at ievents.ucsd.edu. And as always, please contact us if you have any questions at icontact.ucsd.edu. Oh, and follow us on social media at istudents.ucsd. This is our Instagram handle. But yeah, I don't see any questions coming in the Q&A. I'll give you guys a few more minutes. Is there anything else you would like to ask? Otherwise, thank you so much for joining. Um, really appreciate your attendance. Um, and otherwise, if you think of a question later on, please feel free to let us know through our contact form.
Question in the Q&A, which I see Kyle is responding to. Um, During this webinar, we will not have the chance to look up individual students' iPortal requests, but thank you so much if you have submitted your check-in form or if you are working on that now. If you are not sure if your check-in form has been received or gone through, you can always email us at istudents@ucsd.edu, or on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday mornings, we offer a drop-in Zoom, so no appointment needed, from 9 to 10:30. It is called Tech Support or iPortal Support. If you go to icontact.ucsd.edu and you look down the list of all the different ways you can contact us, you will see an option that says tech support, and you can access that Zoom at the times I mentioned, which are also noted there on the website, and speak to an advisor about your iPortal request. This is a great way if you have submitted an iPortal request to check on the status of it, or if you are experiencing technical difficulties with submitting the request, or maybe you submitted it, but you got a notification that it was set to incomplete and you need some clarification on what you need to do to complete it. Tech support is another great option to get assistance with those iPortal requests. Okay. So we have a great question. On Handshake, it looks like there are filters for CPT, OPT, but not academic training. How do I find a job that's open to academic training? Um, Handshake is one of those online job search resources that is run by the Career Center. So this is not a platform that our office has access to. This is a great question for the Career Center to contact one of our two contacts. You can fill out their contact form on their website. Again, their website is career.ucsd.edu. Oh, it looks like Joe wants to comment. Yeah, Joe, I'll let you speak up.
Oh no, sorry. I just marked it that we answer this question
Oh,
live
okay.
so that we can
Uh,
keep track of, yeah, which ones we answered or not. Yeah,
thank
you can
you.
go ahead. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a good question to ask the Career Center. I know that they try to keep track of which employers we are aware of who have hired international and exchange students on CPT, OPT, and academic training. So some of that may be dependent on what the employer has reported to us. Um, but I would say email the Career Center. You can either fill out their contact form at career.ucsd.edu or reference this presentation when it's posted on our website in about a week and email our contacts there, Jessica and Josue, to inquire about this. Great question.
May I comment as
Yeah,
well?
yeah,
Okay.
please.
So one thing you may find is that the majority of students in the US are F1 students. So you may find instances like this where it seems to be catered towards F1, referencing CPT, OPT, although as a J1 student, you will be pursuing academic training. Generally, opportunities that are available for CPT and OPT will also be available and can meet the academic training requirements. When talking with recruiters at job fairs, just be aware that they may not immediately understand and know what academic training is just because of how much smaller the J1 population is compared to F1. So yes, definitely reference this presentation and all of our academic training materials on our website. There we do outline the employer requirements, which for the most part really comes down to being related to your degree and meeting the um, our requirements if you've already graduated. So yeah, as a general thing when going through Handshake, it for the most part, all those CPT, OPT filtered employers should be applicable for academic training, but feel free to bring it to us if you have any further questions about a specific job opportunity. Okay. I don't see any more questions coming in. So I'd just like to say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for joining us today and for spending an hour of your evening with us. I hope that we can see you at future ISEO events. So please come up and say hi.